While many speculate that World War III will involve a catastrophic nuclear war, the truth is this is merely the endgame.
We're at the brink of World War III, just in case anybody doesn't know it.
From my point of view, World War III is already happening.
Worldwide, this World War III.
This is first strike territory for World War III.
I think we are sleepwalking our way into World War III.
You think World War III's coming? I'm very scared.
That's called World War III.
Before we ever witness mushroom clouds on the horizon, we'll be engaged in a different kind of warfare, not like the traditional battles that you've seen in the movies. This is what experts call hybrid warfare.
Hybrid warfare is a military strategy that blends conventional warfare tactics with unconventional methods in order to win and hopefully avoid full-blown nuclear war.
Today, with the assistance of my AI companion, we'll explore the various ways that World War III could unfold through hybrid warfare before it reaches its nuclear conclusion. The following are the many ways that World War III will be fought before it goes nuclear. Let's get to it.
Nuclear posturing can be weaponized by using it as a means of psychological and political coercion. A country may employ aggressive rhetoric, provocative military maneuvers, or the showcasing of advanced nuclear capabilities to intimidate adversaries, shape their behavior, and gain a strategic advantage without actually resorting to nuclear warfare.
An example of modern nuclear posturing would be Russia's deployment of new nuclear weapons systems like the Sarmat-2 missile, as well as the maneuvering of mobile nuclear platforms to neighboring Belarus. Also conducting tests of these new weapon systems, nuclear emergency drills, elevating their strategic combat readiness level, the withdrawal from numerous nuclear treaties, as well as the issuance of threats and red lines. All of these are forms of psychological nuclear warfare.
In contemporary warfare, advanced weaponry capable of emitting powerful EMP pulses is specifically engineered to interfere with communication systems, disable the sophisticated computer systems essential for operating modern fighter jets, and potentially cripple an entire nation's electrical grid.
The Starfish Prime experiment was a 1962 high-altitude nuclear test where a 1.4 megaton warhead was detonated 400 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean. This generated a massive electromagnetic pulse, also known as an EMP. EMP weapons like this are highly lethal because they can disrupt and damage electronic systems over large areas. These pose a serious threat to modern societies who are heavily reliant on electronics for critical infrastructure, communication, and essential services, without causing immediate physical harm. This makes them a potentially devastating tool in modern warfare, or as a means of strategic disruption.
Covert weapon systems. Weapons systems that are disguised as everyday vehicles or items fall under the category of concealed weapons or covert weaponry. These are designed to hide their true nature and purpose, allowing them to blend into civilian environments or avoid detection and used for surprise attack. For example, military vehicles designed to resemble civilian cars or trucks for covert operations are often called sleeper vehicles or stealth vehicles. Bombs or explosives concealed within everyday items like backpacks, luggage, or even toys can be used for covert attacks. Nuclear weapons can be integrated into these systems so they can be leveraged strategically.
In Iran's military parade in 2023, the nation showcased numerous weapon systems that were concealed in various transport containers and cargo trucks. In November of 2023, one of these IRGC deployment systems was recorded firing in Iraq. As shown here, a missile launching system disguised as a fuel truck was used in combat.
Attacks on critical infrastructure can include the power grid, water works facilities, oil and gas pipelines, oil refineries and oil fields, and even chemical plants.
The attack on the Nord Stream pipeline serves as a stark example of hybrid warfare, employing both conventional military tactics and non-military means to achieve strategic objectives. By targeting the critical energy infrastructure, attackers sought to destabilize the region's economy, undermine confidence in energy security, and sow discord among nations. Similarly, the Houthis from Yemen and their attacks on Saudi Arabian oil facilities using drones and missiles also represent a form of hybrid warfare employing both conventional and unconventional means to target critical economic infrastructure. Their strategy seeks to undermine Saudi Arabia's economy and regional influence while exerting pressure on the Saudis from their allies to make geopolitical concessions.
80% of global transport is done by sea. Disrupting shipping corridors can have immense economic impacts and lead to material shortages of various commodities. This can take the form of blocking canals, sinking ships within narrow corridors, hijacking vessels, mining shipping lanes, or blocking or militarily shutting down straits.
In November of 2023, Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, primarily through missile and drone strikes, targeted international shipping and infrastructure. These attacks were claimed to be in response to Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip. The attacks occurred primarily around the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, disrupting global trade routes, causing delays, and increasing shipping and insurance costs. This region's significance for oil transportation amplifies the risks, potentially impacting oil prices and supply chains. It also has led to an increased naval presence by numerous countries, including the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, heightening regional tensions.
Blowing up dams can be a military tactic employed to cause environmental destruction, destroy a piece of critical infrastructure that may also be a bridge or a power generation source, shape a battlefield, preoccupy the enemy with emergency management, and lead to large numbers of civilian casualties.
A great example of this was the Kakhovka Dam in Ukraine, which was breached on June 6 of 2023 due to both what Ukrainian and Russian sources claim was an explosion. The reasons for the dam's destruction are still being debated, with some experts suggesting that it could have been a deliberate attack by one of the warring parties. This incident occurred just as Ukraine was preparing for the widely anticipated counteroffensive, and the destruction of the dam led to severe flooding in several towns and villages in both Russian-occupied and Ukrainian-controlled parts of the Kherson region. Another example of this might be the Taiwanese Defense Ministry and their long-established plans of blowing up the Three Gorges Dam in China as a response to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. This would cause immense amount of damage and affect nearly 400 million people who are living downstream of the dam.
Cyber warfare involves employing digital tools to launch attacks on an adversary's computer systems, networks, and infrastructure. These actions have the potential to disrupt communications, compromise sensitive information, target banking systems, or even inflict physical damage on power grids.
A primary example of this is in December of 2015. A sophisticated cyber attack targeted Ukraine's power grid infrastructure. This led to a widespread blackout. This attack is notable because it was one of the first known instances of a cyber attack causing a significant disruption to critical infrastructure. It was later attributed to a Russian state-sponsored hacking group. This raised concerns about the potential for cyber attacks to be used as a tool of statecraft in conflicts between nations.
Destroying or impeding infrastructure relating to roads, public transport, or bridges and railways. This will make these impassable and will impact transportation and logistics.
The recent series of attacks on the Kerch Bridge in Crimea by Ukraine not only pose a threat to the security and infrastructure of the bridge, but also have the potential to disrupt trade and transport routes, impacting the economy of Crimea. Similarly, the targeting of roadways through various choke points, mountain ranges, or key bridges can disrupt enemy logistics and mobility. These types of attacks can hinder the movement of troops, supplies, they can isolate military units, they can impede overall effectiveness of military operations, and they can force the enemy to divert resources to repair or rebuild critical infrastructure.
Targeted assassinations involve the deliberate and selective elimination of individuals outside of legal proceedings, with the intent to disrupt chains of command.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist in 1914 triggered a chain of events that led to World War I. Austria-Hungary's subsequent declaration of war on Serbia and the complex system of alliances in Europe escalated the conflict. Eventually, it involved many different nations and led to the outbreak of World War I on July 28, 1914. Similarly, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, a A top Iranian military commander by a US drone strike in January of 2020 escalated tensions between the United States and Iran. Iran retaliated with missile strikes on a US base in Iraq, bringing the two countries to the brink of war before tensions eventually subsided.
The taking of hostages can be often politically motivated or intended to raise a ransom or to enforce an exchange.
In October of 2023, Hamas, a Palestinian militant organization, took hundreds of hostages as a tactic to exert pressure and gain political concessions from Israel. These actions appeared to be for the purpose of inflicting psychological stress on the Israelis, generating international attention, and putting pressure on the opposing side. It should be known that hostage-taking is widely condemned under international humanitarian law and is considered a war crime when civilians are targeted.
An assault on nuclear power facilities or the locations where spent fuel is stored could lead to a disastrous radiological situation. This could lead to widespread acute and prolonged health effects for impacted populations.
The nuclear power plants in Ukraine have become a strategic focal point in the ongoing tensions with Russia. These facilities, such as the Zaporozhye and Rivne power plants, are critical assets that can potentially be targeted and manipulated to wield influence in the conflict. The Russians have been accused of using them for weapon storage and as a staging ground or shield for launching attacks. Their significance not only lies in the generation of essential electricity, but also in regards to potential environmental and humanitarian ramifications if compromised. Ukraine's ability to safeguard and effectively manage these nuclear power plants is integral to its national security agenda in the broader geopolitical context. Similarly, the 440 nuclear power reactors around the world must be factored in to the strategic calculus of a world war.
Governments are increasingly utilizing displaced individuals to exploit Europe's divisions and anxieties related to migrants. This approach may also function as a means to infiltrate a country with sleeper cells that can be activated during periods of wartime.
In November of 2023, Finland closed all of its border crossings to Russia. This was due to the controversy surrounding the influx of immigrants over these border crossings. As Finland only recently joined NATO, there is a debate as to whether the immigrant issue is just an excuse to militarize the border with Russia. The Finnish government, of course, has cited concerns over national security and the need to maintain control over its borders, and has accused Russia of facilitating illegal migrant crossings. The concern is that Russian spies, agents, and saboteurs could be embedded amongst these immigrants.
Initiating forest fires can result in extensive environmental devastation, jeopardizing an adversary's resources. This tactic has the potential to influence the battlefield and divert the attention of their emergency services.
One example of this is the use of forest fires during the Vietnam War. The United States employed incendiary devices such as napalm to ignite fires in dense forests and jungles in an attempt to expose enemy hiding spots and supply routes used by the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese forces. The intention here was to deprive the enemy cover and to disrupt operations. It should be known that the use of forest fires as a weapon is widely considered illegal under international law, including the Geneva Conventions. And this is due to the indiscriminate harm that it might cause to civilians and the environment. It's very likely this tactic will be employed in the future.
Targeting military and commercial airstrips would cripple the enemy's ability to mount a counteroffensive. This tactic restricts an adversary from being reinforced by their allies.
Airports and seaports are going to be one of the first things to go in the run-up to World War III. For example, Israel has targeted Syria's airports in the past year as a part of its ongoing efforts to disrupt the flow of weapons and military equipment to the Iranian-backed forces within the region. These strikes have been aimed at degrading the capabilities of these groups and preventing them from entrenching themselves in Syria.
Terrorist attacks in its broadest sense is the use of intentional violence and fear to achieve political or ideological aims. The term is used in this regard primarily to refer to intentional violence during peacetime or in the context of war against non-combatants.
On September 11, 2001, an event occurred that would initiate several proxy wars within the Middle East throughout the next several decades. A group of 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airplanes in the United States. They deliberately crashed 2 of these planes into the Twin Towers, another plane was flown into the Pentagon, while a 4th plane, United Flight 93, crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives in these coordinated terrorist attacks. This led to significant changes in US security and foreign policy, the effects of which are still being felt today.
Electronic warfare is a specialized field of military operations that involves the use of electromagnetic energy to disrupt, deceive, or disable enemy electronic systems, including communication, radar, and navigation systems.
Russia has become very proficient in the use of electronic warfare in the current ongoing war with Ukraine. In late November of 2023, Russian forces successfully disrupted the Ukrainian military's command and control networks in the Donetsk region using advanced electronic warfare. This disruption allowed Russian troops to gain a tactical advantage and carry out a series of successful offensives. The Ukrainian forces had to resort to more traditional means of communication, which were less efficient and more vulnerable to interception. This event highlights the importance of electronic warfare in modern conflicts and the need for robust communication systems.
Space warfare encompasses battles in outer space, involving actions from ground to space and space to ground. This type of warfare includes attacks on terrestrial targets, conflicts between satellites, and assaults on satellites from Earth.
In 2021, Russia was reported to have conducted an anti-satellite test, shooting down one of its own defunct satellites, Cosmos 1408. This act sparked international concern due to the generation of a large field of space debris which poses risk to other satellites and spacecraft in Earth's orbit. This incident raised tensions and highlighted the growing militarization of space. Another example is the X-37B orbital test vehicle, which is a secretive spaceplane operated by the US Space Force. The specific details of its payloads and activities remain classified.
Military exercises. Staging of military equipment can cause an enemy to assume an attack may be imminent and redirect resources away from critical areas of interest.
In June of 2023, NATO conducted its largest deployment exercise in its history. It involved 25 nations taking part in a 2-week-long air defender exercise with around 10,000 personnel and 250 aircraft. While this was just an exercise, the risk was that it could be perceived as a threat by the Russians, and that the Russians might interpret it as being a launching point for a real-world attack.
The use of environmental modification techniques for hostile purposes is another method of warfare. These techniques include causing changes to the natural environment that could lead to widespread, long-lasting, or severe harm, such as inducing natural disasters. One of these events might be inducing a tsunami utilizing a nuclear weapon, weather modification, or terraforming activities.
Russia's plan to use a 100-megaton nuclear torpedo to induce a tsunami on the US East Coast has been a topic of concern in recent years. This weapon, known as the Poseidon, is a nuclear-powered unmanned underwater vehicle which is capable of carrying a very large nuclear warhead. The idea behind this weapon is to create a massive tsunami that would devastate coastal cities, causing widespread destruction and loss of life.
Biological warfare, also known as germ warfare, is the use of biological agents, such as bacteria, viruses, toxins, and fungi, as weapons to intentionally cause harm or death to humans, animals, or plants. These agents are typically used with the intent of causing illness, death, or other negative effects on a targeted population, military personnel, or infrastructure.
In the medieval era, during sieges, attackers might catapult corpses of contaminated materials into besieged cities, inadvertently spreading disease like bubonic plague. Today, biowarfare is highly sophisticated and an intentional tactic that involves the use of biological agents like bacteria, viruses, or toxins as weapons. This involves the deliberate release of pathogens that can cause illness, death, and societal disruption.
Economic warfare pertains to the strategic maneuvers and tactics adopted by nations or entities to secure a competitive edge or wield influence over others via economic channels. This includes methods like trade measures, sanctions, boycotts, tariffs, asset freezes, embargoes, restrictions on investment capital flows, and financial manipulation.
The strategy of imposing sanctions on Russia in an attempt to stop their aggression in Ukraine is a multifaceted approach aimed at applying economic and political pressure to compel Russia to cease its actions. The primary goal is to isolate Russia from the global financial system and limit its ability to fund its military operations. However, many have been skeptical as to whether or not it's achieving its desired effect. As nearly 2 years into the war, Russia's economy has proven to be exceptionally robust.
Lawfare entails utilizing legal systems and institutions to harm or undermine an opponent, or to discourage individuals from exercising their legal rights.
Lawfare is the use of international law as a tool of war to achieve military objectives. An example of this is in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Palestinian Authority applied to the International Criminal Court to investigate alleged war crimes by Israel, while Israel defended its actions in the Mavi Marmara incident as self-defense under international law. These examples demonstrate how lawfare is employed in modern warfare to reach military goals through legal means.
Online information warfare, also known as cyber or information warfare, involves the use of digital tools and tactics to manipulate, disrupt, or influence information flows on the internet. This can involve the use of deep fakes, fake news, and artificial intelligence.
In the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, one example of information warfare is the use of deepfake technology. In 2022, a video circulated on social media that appeared to show Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urging his troops to surrender to Russia. However, it was later revealed to be a deepfake created by Russian hackers to spread disinformation and demoralize Ukrainian forces. This incident highlights the potential dangers and complexities of information warfare in the digital age.
Subversion and propaganda. The tactic of one country inciting riots, protests, and revolts in another country is often referred to as subversion or political interference. It involves covertly or overtly supporting opposition groups, funding dissenting movements, or using propaganda to create internal turmoil and disrupt the targeted country's stability and government.
In the 2004 Ukrainian presidential election, allegations of fraud in a deeply divided nation pitted Viktor Yanukovych against Viktor Yushchenko. Notably, some accused Western intelligence agencies, particularly the United States, of supporting Yushchenko's campaign. This controversy triggered massive protests in Kiev, international mediation, and ultimately led to a December 2004 revote, resulting in Yushchenko's presidency and closer ties with the West. There are numerous examples of color revolutions being waged by intelligence agencies.
The strategic utilization of subterranean spaces in warfare entails deploying military forces, equipment, or infrastructure beneath the Earth's surface, such as in underground tunnels, bunkers, or caves. This tactic provides advantages such as concealment, protection, and the element of surprise, proving valuable for purposes like sheltering troops, storing supplies, conducting covert operations, or launching unexpected attacks.
In the Gaza Strip, Hamas uses a vast network of underground tunnels to launch surprise attacks on Israeli targets, transport weapons and supplies, and provide shelter for its fighters. Subterranean warfare is effective because it allows Hamas to bypass Israeli defenses and maintain a tactical advantage. These tunnels are also very difficult to detect and destroy. In the same way, the Ukrainian military effectively utilized the extensive network of underground tunnels at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol to defend against Russian forces during the siege of the city. These tunnels provided shelter, facilitated covert movement, and enabled the defenders to launch surprise attacks on invading forces. The effectiveness of this strategy was demonstrated by the Ukrainian forces' ability to hold out for an extended period despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned.
A dirty bomb, also referred to as a radiological dispersal device, is a combination of explosives, such as dynamite, along with radioactive powder or pellets.
In late 2022, a dirty bomb dispute erupted between Ukraine and Russia. Russia accused Ukraine of planning to use a dirty bomb combining explosives with radioactive material. This was of such great concern to the Russians that the defense minister Sergei Shoigu contacted his NATO counterparts to warn them about their accountability should a nuclear dirty bomb be used. Ukraine and its Western allies, however, denied these claims, inviting UN inspectors in for transparency. During a UN Security Council meeting, the US, UK, and France dismissed the accusations as Russian disinformation, citing a lack of evidence. However, this does highlight the risk of the use of dirty bombs in modern warfare.
Covert operations encompass the gathering of signal intelligence, human intelligence, code decryption, counterintelligence, military intelligence, as well as surveillance and reconnaissance.
During the Cold War, Soviet and American espionage played a crucial role in gathering intelligence and influencing the course of the conflict. Both sides employed spies and covert agents in order to steal military and technological secrets. This led to a constant arms race and in efforts to outdo each other in military capabilities.
Artificial intelligence in warfare encompasses a range of applications, including autonomous weapons, target recognition, predictive analytics, cyber warfare, logistics optimization, decision support, surveillance, and training simulations.
Israel's military has been utilizing artificial intelligence to enhance its targeting capabilities with its autonomous drones. AI is employed to analyze vast amounts of data and select targets for airstrikes, as well as rapidly plan attacks on Iranian assets within the region. The Israeli Defense Forces have embedded AI into lethal operations, which has allowed them to more accurately pinpoint targets and, according to the Israelis, minimize civilian casualties.
Chemical warfare refers to the use of toxic chemicals, including gases and liquids, as weapons in armed conflicts. These chemicals are deployed to harm, incapacitate, or kill enemy personnel or to disrupt their military capabilities, and they can have devastating effects on both combatants and civilians.
One example of chemical weapons use occurred in the Syrian civil war. In 2013, the Syrian government was accused of launching a chemical attack in the Ghouta region of Damascus, resulting in hundreds of casualties. This incident drew international condemnation and led to the discussions about the use of chemical weapons in contemporary conflicts. Initially, the Syrian government denied responsibility for the attack. They blamed rebel groups for the incident. The incident, however, remains a subject of contention and ongoing investigation.
Advanced conventional weapons tech hypersonic missiles can move with unparalleled speed and maneuverability. Loitering autonomous drones, swarm drones, or unmanned ground-based vehicles can be used for surveillance, reconnaissance, or targeted strikes. Exoskeletons and powered armor can enhance soldiers' strength, endurance, and survivability on the battlefield. Directed energy weapons includes laser and microwave weapons that use directed energy beams to target and disable enemy systems.
Russia's use of hypersonic missiles in Ukraine has been a significant development in the ongoing conflict. On March 9th of 2023, Russia launched 6 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles at targets across Ukraine. The significance of this event lies in the fact that hypersonic missiles are difficult to intercept due to their high speed and maneuverability. This poses a greater threat to Ukraine's air defense systems. While the hypersonic missiles that have been used have only had conventional weapons on them, they can also be mounted with nuclear weapons and be used strategically.
Thanks for watching this video. For information about the warning signs of an impending nuclear war, click here. For information on surviving the first 24 hours of a nuclear war, click here. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and stay prepared.